This is my Aston Martin DB9 and it's the biggest challenge I've taken on yet because quite simply, it doesn't run. In fact, it's been for a swim. As you can see the waterline up there. So the engine we suspect is seized, which we'll be confirming today, as well as beginning the process of separating the body from the chassis and engine and beginning to try and repair this engine if it's salvageable, otherwise replacing it with a new engine. I mean, I'm no mechanic. If you're new to the channel, then yeah, I sold my business last year and I'm completely new to this. The most mechanical thing I've done is change a spark plug in my Range Rover. That's it. So it's bound to be interesting. And yeah, we all had to learn somewhere. But for me, and because of you guys, I'm learning on a V12 engine. So let's jump into it.
And you might well remember last time we removed the inlet manifold and plugs to reveal one damaged plug. I then went ahead and purchased a cheap borescope and the findings were, well, pretty clear.
And with the help of a borescope, I've just found out what the problem is and why this engine is seized. So why don't we jump in and let me show you what I've just seen.
So I'm starting off on the left-hand bank as this is the side with the damaged plug. The first 5 cylinders all looked okay.
Now for the shocker.
The piston in cylinder 6 has gone MIA on us as we can see what looks like the rod beneath. Thanks to you guys at home who've reached out, it seems a common fault in these DB9s is the cooling of the rearmost cylinders. So I'm leaning toward thinking it overheated and broke. I'm actually wondering now whether the flood was even a part of the issue to begin with. Curious to hear all your theories though, but yeah, there's definitely a potential conspiracy going on here.
So there we have it, the piston has broken. Now it depends how much damage we've actually done to the cylinder head, but there are second-hand ones online for around 475 pounds for this side as well, so I'm not too worried about that. In terms of the actual piston itself, you can find them for about 125 pounds online. So this could, although it's very labor intensive, be a cheap engine rebuild potentially. And I don't think it's caused too many other issues because it's broken at the wrist pin. Makes me think that the piston damage will not have affected the crankshaft. That's my theory anyway, and obviously that's the expensive bit. A new crankshaft is £3,700 plus VAT. You can't get them secondhand. So yeah, that's what I've been hoping it's not.
And there's potentially more promising news as looking through the oil filler neck, I can see the timing chain seems to still be in place on the camshaft, which is, of course, linked up to the crankshaft. Running through the cylinders on the right-hand side all seem to be okay, and it's fair to say the borescope was definitely worth it.
Honestly, that was fascinating being able to look actually into the cylinders. That borescope, £35 from Amazon, can't complain at that. And yeah, just in case it was in doubt at all, engine has to come out, we've got to rebuild this.
And so picking up where we left off, following the workshop manual, we've got to disconnect the headlights from the lower bracket. This is because the top 2 headlight bolts are connected to the top and the bottom headlight bolt connected to the bottom. If I don't do this, it'll inevitably break. Once that's done, I just took a quick moment to make sure all the electrical plugs are disconnected from the chassis before moving on to removing the fuse box and the fuse box bracket.
Alright, well the bracket for the fuse box is now also out, which took a hot minute because all these plugs that you see here, the connected ones, not the loose ones, they were all connected into it somehow and they were just so awkward to get at. You can see all these little grooves here. This is where they all were basically, and yeah, you can see it was like these sort of little tabs. And obviously because it's been underwater, it's all just a bit more stiff and awkward down there. So yeah, bit of a nuisance, but anyway, it's out.
The next step is to disconnect the earth plugs from the studs on the firewall. I was able to reach this with an extension, but I can already tell it'll be awkward to reconnect when putting the car back together down the line. It states in the manual to make sure the same cables go back on the same studs, so I've marked one stud green as well as the plugs.
Alright, well I think I've got the last one loose now. But honestly, I've had to use extensions to reach it. I don't know how on earth these are going to go back on, because that is one fiddly job I'm not looking forward to. My hands are way too big for this. I think to be an Aston specialist, you need to have tiny hands, tiny gloves. There we go, both out. Blue on both occasions was the top one, so it's nice and easy. But yeah, that is going to be a horrible job to put back in. I mean, you can't even see where it's going. That's how hidden it is. There you go, 2 studs down there. You can see I haven't taken the cable off one just yet. But yeah, awkward as hell. So yeah, really not looking forward to putting those back in. I don't know how I'm going to do it. Any suggestions I'm welcome to. Maybe I might have to get like a magnet piece or something. That's probably it. Probably get a piece that's magnetic, sort of socket, and then once it screws in, obviously I can pull the magnet away. But yeah, anyway, we've got to now remove the PCMs which are in the wheel arch. So just lifted the car up so we can get on with that.
The PCMs were straightforward enough to remove, so I've kind of glossed over this bit. There's 3 screws, then you drop the bracket down and just disconnect the plugs.
Well, that is both PCMs out now. We've got the driver's side. I've just labelled them up, passenger, and considering how mucky it is on this side, which is obviously from being underwater, well, I assume, the connections all look fine there. And also absolutely fine here as well. No corrosion or anything inside the actual plugs. So I'm imagining they work, which I would have thought so anyway, because the car was sort of switching on, it just wasn't cranking. So I wasn't expecting any issues, and I think, hopefully, fingers crossed, we might be all right. Well, for the life of me, I can't seem to get those hoses off because the clamps are pointing downwards and I just can't get anything on the end of that. I've even tried coming up from down the bottom, but I just don't have anything long enough. So what I am gonna do instead is take the coolant pipes off at the other points and basically keep it connected to the bulkhead, not the engine. So just swapping it around basically. And there should be another point down here. Just give me a sec to set up the light. And if you look at that clip there, there's another one down there. That's the one it suggests doing anyway on the diagram. It's actually just this one that I'm doing slightly different, but that one's low enough that I should be able to get it from underneath. And I'll explain why it's pointing down. Okay, well there's the pipe out the way, and that just seems so much easier having to just reconnect down here eventually than actually getting into the bulkhead, and it'll just hang with the bulkhead instead. But yeah, anyway, I'll do the bottom one as well. There you go, that's the other coolant pipe we need to remove. Quite easy from down this end, plenty of access, so yeah, we'll remove that. And voila, impossible to get a camera angle there because I need to get my hands in here. You just wouldn't have seen anything, but yeah, just literally pulled the clip off. It's now sitting down here, and then just get a bit of lubricant, and then yeah, it just slid off. And I think doing it my way rather than the way that it says to do it in the manual is just going to be so much easier when it comes to putting this back together. Rather than having to reach down into the bulkhead, I'll now just have very accessible points. One by the engine and one easily accessible from underneath. So not by the book, but I think it's better.
Anyway, moving on, I now had to disconnect the front brake lines, and I've got some Tupperware lined up underneath as I should be able to use this brake fluid again down the line.
Step is to remove the drive shaft, which you can see here. It's the damp bit because I've just put some WD-40 on it. But as you can see, it disconnects. So basically, if I can get a good angle on it, this section of here, if you remember, we've disconnected it from inside the car, from inside the sitting area, the cabin, cockpit, whatever you want to call it. So now we just got disconnected from this side, and then this whole bit should come out.
There's the clip at the bottom that I didn't see that just rotates off. As such, I spent ages trying to prise it off to no avail. Once I saw the clip though, I was able to loop it off, no problem.
This way is down on me. You've got me on my knees.
Voila! All right, drive shaft is out. Turned out just inside the cabin. It was just a bit stiff around this collar here, so I just had to move it sort of the first inch from inside the car, so back down in that horrible place. But yeah, anyway, we got it out, so let's crack on. Voila.
Easy enough. Moving on.
Okay, well, next step is going to be a bit of a tough one to film because you can see that's the torque. Well, next step is basically disconnect the earth from the torque tube. Now, this whole thing here is the torque tube, and it took me a bit of time to find it, but if I focus in down there, if it'll let me, it's not going to let me, is it? But anyway, down there we go, is our earth cable. So that's what I've got to get at.
It was very awkward trying to do this with one hand whilst the other holds the camera, but I'm sure you get the gist of what I was trying to do.
Well, it might not look like I'm doing much, but I'm gradually cutting my fingers and loosening the bolt. That adjustable, managed to get it so loose, but then it just ran out of space. So I'm going to do the rest by hand, and it's hurting. Oh, come on. So it's almost there. That's what she said. There we go. Oh, that hurts so much. Oh, woo. Damn, it's not fun.
But it was another job done, and I'm now on to stage 35 of 50. After that, I had to remove the 2 silencers from the rear exhaust pipes. Typically, the under tray was in the way and 4 of the screws wouldn't play ball, so I just cut them out. The nuts and bolts for the silencers proved to be equally tricky due to being rusted out. I got 3 out though before coming properly stuck on the 4th one.
Okay, well, I've spent about half an hour trying to get this bolt off, trying all sorts of different things. The issue is as you can see from this one, the bolt's meant to stay in place, but it's actually come loose on this, and that freely moves around, well, with this screw. And I'm trying to separate them, but they just seem absolutely seized together. Can't even get my angle grinder in there without lowering the sway bar, which just doesn't look like a fun job, but probably is possible. But it just seems a bit ridiculous. So yeah, this is my current issue. And it's driving me insane, slowly but surely.
I ended up deciding to lower the sway bar and cutting it out with the angle grinder. Enough was enough.
Okay, well that took ages. And to be honest, this piece still won't even come out now. But I guess once I've got the body off, this will be out the way, so I'll be able to actually have a proper look and just try and drill it out. But I hate using the angle grinder at the best of times because it always just feels like you're a moment away from a mistake and like a lost finger or something like that. But normally I have the protector, the sort of protective shield on, but I had to take it off because it was the only way I could get an angle there. So yeah, that was terrifying. And I'm glad that is done. Took me about 15 minutes, maybe even an hour from starting that very first bit on that silencer. But yeah, we can finally move on. Come on.
The next job was to remove the handbrake cable. This seemed easier than I've seen others do it. I was able to leave the cable off its seat with a crowbar before tapping the back of the cable with a hammer, which just loaded out of the hole. Easy. There's two of these, and once they were out, I just had to disconnect the rear wiring harness, which is connected to the chassis on the driver's side.
Well, second last step here, and annoyingly, we're just having issues with disconnecting the rear brake lines because they're so rusted. I've had this before on my Range Rover. It just doesn't want to turn, and instead it's rounding off, as you can see here, which is just an absolute pain because it's so close to being done now.
I ended up just disconnecting it at the disc for now, and from the next clip you can see I'm going to have to look to get replacement lines anyway, so it'll probably just get cut out eventually and replaced with new, not rusted ones.
Well, you're not going to believe this. It's disconnected, but not how it's supposed to be. It's almost the wire was just seized inside, which is just, yeah, this is very frustrating these last couple of steps now. So, I mean, this hose is broken, needs replacing. So yeah, bit of a pain to be honest. I think it means I'm going to have to replace the actual brake lines, which considering how rotted out they are, maybe it's not a bad thing, maybe it's something I should be looking to do anyway. But the bracket's completely rusted. That doesn't seem to really want to come off too much either. I think I should be able to get it off, but it's not happy about it. And then we've obviously got a brake hose to replace, which isn't such a bad one. Hoses might be a good idea to do anyway, seeing as we're sort of doing all this anyway. Might as well just do both hoses. So I'll probably disconnect this hose now as well. But what a nightmare. The thing is, we're so close to the end now and getting it ready. We basically just have this and then a manual override brake or something like that. Manual brake override, I think that's what it is. That's literally the last step. And then this is the one before it. This is the penultimate one. And obviously there had to be just a massive case of rust in there. Like, ridiculous. Okay, well, manual override cable took me absolutely ages to find. So I'm at the rear bit here, under the driver's side, and I'm gonna have to try and find it again. Or if it lets me go up here, that's our cable there. And if it will just let me go up a bit, or if I can move that out the way. See the two bolts over there in the middle of the shot now. That's what we got to disconnect.
I'll be honest, this is another one of those jobs. I'm not too sure how I'll be able to reconnect it, but that's a problem for another day. With the two bolts out, I also disconnected the cable that was hooked on.
So there we have it, with the exception of the fuel line, which obviously I'm waiting for the part to help disconnect it tomorrow. We're ready to drop, and this means I need to now think of how I'm going to make a platform for this, I suppose. Now, admittedly, part of me thought maybe just use the trailer, but thinking about that, that's too wide. We want something narrow. What I'm thinking, because we've got the forklift over there, and also the Mustang that's back from the mechanic, but because we've got the forklift, I'm thinking of just stacking up a series of strong pallets and laying it down on that. That means, for instance, once we actually disconnect the engine from the torque tube, we'll be complete. I think that's right. We'll be able to then just on one pallet move the engine away, and the rest of the drivetrain will be kept on the remaining two pallets, because the forks are long enough. Don't know if I'll be able to show you. The forks are long enough to be able to carry two pallets at a time. So that's what I'm thinking, but I'm a bit short on pallets, so there's plenty online. So I think that's what I'm going to go do now, is go and collect some free pallets in the Range Rover. Quick point to make is just how awkward Astons are to work on. I mean, look at the state of my hands just from working on this Aston. These were uncut before I started this process. When I worked on that Ferrari, I had next to no cuts. Everything was just so much more accessible. But this car is trying to test me, and it's not going to win.
And a couple of hours later, I had the pallets.
Now, obviously, having owned a removal company in the past and having worked in that sector for a long time, I've dealt with a lot of pallets, and I know that they will be strong enough, but I will just put card on top of them as well, just as like a bit of reinforcement as well, just to reduce the pressure that we're putting on the wood, so nothing's going to break or anything like that. But yeah, if you're worried about that, don't be, it'll be fine. And on my head be it. If it's not fine, well, I'm going to look like an idiot now.
The next day, I had the tool to disconnect the fuel lines, which basically sit inside the main tube, around the line, and push the pincers out of the way that were locking the line in place. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, well, I just got one fuel line whilst messing around with it, and I wasn't even expecting it to pop out, so I didn't even have the camera on. But yeah, that's just come out, and it got fuel all over me. Just wasn't expecting it at all. But anyway, on to the next one, which is just a little bit higher up. You can just see it behind the blue clip there. Okay, well, second clip is now out, and as you can see, I'm just letting it drain off. It's just running down the tube. It should enable me to show you 2 disconnected fuel lines. And the trick I found is try not to pull the bottom bit down. The bit that's actually connected on, the clip at the top, lift that off rather than try and pull the rail deck down, because that just pulls the clip back out again. Yeah, I've never actually had to disconnect a fuel line like that before, so I guess you live and you learn. Another lesson to add to one of many I've already had to do on this build. So yeah, I'm just gonna let that drain. Then I think there's the harness I've disconnected from inside the car. I actually need to pull it back through. I didn't quite realize that. So I've got to pull it back through and then sort of connect it around the engine harness and just leave it there, because it shouldn't come with the body. It should stay down with the chassis and engine. So I need to pull it through from the bulkhead. So I need to find that shortly and do that. Okay, so this was the cable that I was referring to. I've just popped this out, this sort of gullet. It says to disconnect it from inside, but I didn't realize it means then pull it through, which I wasn't very clear about. But if I can get a better view, so many cables in the way. See all this wiring harness. I'm pretty sure I need to now pull this through. So I need to get to the other side. Should be able to see it okay. And yeah, if there's any connections still connected, disconnect them. As you can see, some are beginning to come through here. Oh, hang on. I think one's catching. Oh, feels good. What does it? And that's a connected plug. So that can't be a good start. Oh dear, that is disconnected.
I wish that it was different. Don't know what it is that made us so indifferent. We're drifting in the dark. Can we do better? Wish I could rewind back to the start. Can we do better than this? Better. You got me high and drop me low. You got that something I can seem to let go. This love is ill. I wish that it was different.
Well, as you can see, the car is now on the floor. It's actually not even being supported by the lift, so the pallets have worked. You could hear it sort of sinking into the cardboard, so that's fine. Next bit is to disconnect the front subframe from the body. This actually took me a bit of time. For some reason I was looking here for ages, but I believe it's actually the bolts down here. So 1 there, 2, 3, 4, and then we've got 5 hidden away under here, and then 6 over there. A bit easier to follow on this side because there's not so many harnesses in the way. So we've got 1 under there and another. Shall I show you that? So you got 1, 2 on the bottom bit. Then you got another 2 down here on the lower. So 1 here, and then there's 1 around there as well. I believe, yeah, I can just about make it out. And then we got the ones here. And then that's probably going to be one of the most awkward ones to get at.
Can we do better? Wish I could rewind back to the start. Can we do better than this? Better. You got me high, then drop me low. You got that something.
And with the front chassis disconnected, I can now disconnect the rear chassis from the body, and oh my, we're getting pretty close now.
You got me high, then drop me low. You got that something I can seem to let go, to let go.
well, that bolt is not fully out, but there's, sorry, just a pipe in the way. There's absolutely no thread on it. So I'm guessing I can leave it like that because once the body starts lifting, it'll just drop back out. But yeah, you're meant to remove the sway bar, which personally I would do before you lower it down. I think that would have made more sense. Just get the sway bar out the way before you lower it down. I mean, I guess at Aston they have the proper trolleys and the proper access, but if you're doing this at home, or you're trying to do it on pallets like me or anything like that, sort of big items, then yeah, get the sway bar removed before you do the bolts connecting the chassis to the body. And yeah, you'll thank yourself for it later, but it shouldn't make too much of a difference. Like I say, when the body comes up, I think the pins will just drop out. So, job done. So at this point, I tried to start lifting the body, but I quickly realized there was a couple more bits that needed disconnecting first.
Okay, well, this is what I'm struggling with. This is the wire that's getting caught up, and it's meant to stay with the body, but obviously this piece just doesn't want to come out, and it's actually where our coolant lines run through, and I just can't seem to get this out through the gap here. It just seems to keep getting caught, and that's what I'm trying to work around. I don't know if I can feed it around there and then up or what have you, but it's yeah, it's causing me quite a few issues at the minute. Okay, about 15-20 minutes later, it's all loose now, so I should just be able to feed it all through here. I'm not getting it caught now. Off you go. Come on, you do it. Haha! I think I'm gonna have to do the same with this bonnet latch, just figure out how to disconnect it. I think it should just pop out. Yeah, it should just pop out here. And then we can carry on again.
I then tried once more and I was able to get it a bit further up, but again, I could feel it was pinching a bit. On a side note, I disconnected the headlights, which isn't actually on the workshop manual and you don't have to do, but they're easy to take out and it just meant I could see everything a bit more clearly. I'd rather a bit more labor than breaking a wire and breaking my bank.
Okay, well this is what I'm struggling with on this side, is this cable. I think I've just got the solution to it. It actually leads to this earth, and then I've run the camera around the other side, and there's a switch on the other side of this, which I think if I disconnect both of them, it'll free it up, and that will be that side done. But, again, I don't even remember anything about those earth points, but there we go. This is actually the side that's causing me more grief, which is this AC line. Now, the diagram says, well, points towards this point of disconnecting.
And I had no idea how to disconnect it. Thankfully though, we live in a world of Google, and so I was able to quickly find out, and it involves using the same tool I used disconnecting the fuel line.
All right, turns out AC line, you need to release a spring clip, a bit like the fuel line. So I've done that, it's now removed. So now I'm pretty sure we should be able to lift this car, but yeah, it's been testing my patience. I'm beginning to lose the will to live, so hopefully this time around, it just lifts off. Like guys, I just cannot believe this. Like, is this real life right now? Like, 12 months ago, I was humping furniture, and now I'm splitting Aston Martin bodies from their chassis. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And then next, we're gonna be rebuilding an engine. Like, talk about like a pinch yourself moment is seeing this. I don't know. This is just such a rewarding sight. Oh, come on. So obviously, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. I would really appreciate it. I'm sure it helps with SEO. And yeah, obviously, if you haven't subscribed and you want to watch me rebuild this engine, well, hit that red button down below. And yeah, see you next week. Yes!